Palestinians in Gaza are protesting an agreement that restores U.S. funding to the UN agency that supports them. In July, the Biden administration signed a deal to resume funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees after the Trump White House cut it off. The agreement calls on UNRWA to make sure U.S. funds won't go to help any refugee receiving military training from guerrilla-type groups or anyone who's engaged in terrorism. It also calls for monitoring Palestinian school curricula for anti-Semitism. Palestinians say the agreement violates their rights. Now UN Watch, a watchdog group, is calling on UNRWA to identify employees it recently suspended because of ties to terror groups like Hamas. The agency reportedly suspended at least 6 employees accused of anti-Semitism and incitement against Israel. Former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danone, told CBN News UNRWA no longer serves a useful purpose.
I think it is about time to dissolve UNRWA. We have seen the incitement in the past. We have seen the curriculum in the UNRWA schools. And we have seen the collaboration with Hamas terrorists in Gaza. So I think, every once in a while you will hear those reports. I think for the long term, it is about time to replace UNRWA.
And this as UNRWA faces a budget crisis. The agency will host a conference for donors next month looking to raise $800 million a year for the next 3 years. Gordon, I know that you have been warning against UNRWA for quite some time.
Yes, the agency needs to go away. It was established back in 1948 to take care of the Arabs who voluntarily left Israel. I underline that. They were told by the neighboring Arab countries, the countries that surrounded Israel, to evacuate so they wouldn't be collateral damage. Because when Israel declared its independence, those countries declared war. And so they're not war refugees because of what Israel did. All Israel did was declare its independence. They were refugees because of what the Arabs did. So here we are more than 70 years later, and they're asking for millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to continue, quote, supporting the refugees, close quote. Well, it's now in the 5th generation since 1948. At some point in time, they have to get real about, okay, can we now live in Lebanon? Can we now live in Jordan? And can we ever form a Palestinian state? They always refuse to do it. And why is that? Because their ideology hasn't changed since 1948. Their ideology is to drive Israel into the sea. They have no tolerance for Israel. They have no tolerance for the Jews. So here comes our State Department saying, well, we want to help people, and so we're going to sign this agreement. And in the agreement, we have zero tolerance for anyone who's going to be part of a terrorist group. We're going to have zero tolerance for anyone teaching children and teaching hatred and incitement. Okay, so that's their policy. That's what they signed back in July. So here we are in October, and what happens? Well, UNRWA's looking for money, and the UN Watch, they came in and evaluated social media posts and statements by teachers who are teaching children in these refugee camps and in the Palestinian areas. They're the ones teaching. What are they teaching? Well, 3 of them identified by UN Watch are teaching that Hitler is a hero. And this is what they're instructing the children. Another one was teaching that we should kill Jewish boys. Another one was teaching we should kill Jewish rabbis. So where is the zero tolerance? UNRWA, the UN Watch identified over 100 employees who were doing this kind of activity and publicly proclaiming anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment. And UNRWA says, well, we're going to suspend 6 of them. And that shows how much we're enforcing our zero tolerance. But here's the kicker. They're being suspended with pay. So what are you and I, as U.S. taxpayers, doing? We're funding that. We're paying them. And so much for the zero tolerance. Here's a bright idea. Let's get Ben & Jerry's to ban ice cream at the State Department, and maybe they'll get some sense and say, well, our tax dollars shouldn't go to support this.